Hello and welcome to Geek and Biscuits with your host Dan and Grant. How you doing, mate? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, buddy. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not bad at all. Thank you very much. Yeah, so tonight, a classic from 1959, House on Haunted Hill.
Ooh, how delightfully strange.
David Judy. So yeah, let's as we always do, let's start. When did you first see House on Haunted Hill?
Absolutely ashamed to say that it wasn't about 1999. It was the era of CGI in movies, and as me and you, very similar age, and we were obviously prepping to like finish school, start college. I think that we'd just come at the age of, it's not like today you can switch on a TV and have a million movies. I think we were at the age, especially I was, where it's just like all of my money was just get spent on buying or renting films. And House on Haunted Hill.
Yep.
The remake, the 1999 version. Watched that. Always knew there was a older film, and watched that, enjoyed it at the time, and it's still not, it's not as good today, but I do enjoy it. It's a guilty pleasure, and so obviously I thought I need to see this, and as long as I've known about Vincent Price, I've always loved him. I think the last thing I knew, I think obviously Vincent Price knew what he was, knew what he was about, knew what kind of films he made. But I think the last thing I learned about Vincent Price was his actual cameo in Thriller. So I just kind of went along, thought, love this guy, let's watch this film. And although, not to be spoilers straight away, although I do have a few issues with the film, I think it's just feels like it should be watched every year, like a really nice Halloween kind of introduction, like an early afternoon Halloween movie to put on.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. Yeah.
What about you, mate? What about you? Dad sneak you down?
No, not for this one. No. It was the big thing for Vincent Price movies when we were at college. I started sort of towards my later teens. I just started buying Vincent Price films. I don't know. I can't tell you what. I think
Price is Right, bitch.
That's the title of the episode. Yeah, it was. My dad had shown me the Dr. Phibes films.
Yes.
Which I also, for all the campy weirdness, they are to me the classics of my youth. So I just wanted to go out, and I'd seen like Tomb of Lygia, and For the House of Usher, which I'd recommend to anyone. That's an absolute staple of classic horror, like Roger Corman era. So I think it was just going back through, and then obviously I'd seen the remake at yours.
Yes, I forgot that.
Yeah.
I can remember first time watching it, but I knew that was obviously on my own and stuff. But I always knew I'd watched it with somebody, and I'm glad that you've
it's me.
Yeah,
because it was always, to me, it was like watching it and then going, "Oh, look, it's Spike from Buffy," and sort of like. Yeah.
Why is Lisa Loeb next to him?
And then just going back and thinking, well, there's a Vincent Price film here, so I'll go back and watch it. And I think so it was around about that time, probably not much after. And again, it's one of those, I watched it on my own. I had, back when I lived back at home, and I had a TV. This is like the old portable TVs.
Yeah.
Still had a VHS thing on the player on the bottom. I had me Xbox 360. So bought the DVD.
Good.
Put it on at night. And it was in the corner. And I had a raised bed because I had like a desk and everything underneath. So I laid on there watching it. And what really struck me was it was the old woman, the blind woman, in the room. When Nora is on her own, and this face, for those people who haven't seen it, hopefully you'd see it because we'll go into spoilers and stuff. But this sort of old woman with her hands out, or clawed hands, sort of just like a death grin, this face grin sort of thing. And I'll be honest with you, because I was
doing the best impression of Gene Wilder.
Oh yeah. And now looking at it now, you think, well, it's a little bit, for its time, great, a little bit hokey and that, but I genuinely sort of went, what the fuck is that? Initially. But I just loved it. I think, and again, it goes in with those that sort of that also classic. It was one of those things I was glad to own. It's not a film that I could pull out, like you said, probably pull out once a year over Halloween and that. But just a great little film. And I think, before getting into all the plot details and stuff, I think it's a great film because it's not what you expect.
Yeah,
it's advertised as a haunted house film. They play it as a haunted house film, but it's one of, I think, going back, it's probably one of those films that has, and probably one of the earliest twists that I'm aware of when it comes to plot.
Murder mystery as well. It's almost played out like by the end. Yeah,
which I was really impressed with. But yeah, so we 9:59. William Castle, who, noted director. It was starring Vincent Price, written by Rob White, who had written, other than his novels and stuff, he'd written 13 Ghosts, which also had a remake.
I'm just having palpitations at the 2001 remake. Just let's as long as I never hear about that film again, we'll be all right.
Just you wait, mate. Just you wait. So as the story goes, Vincent Price, Frederick Lauren, is a millionaire, and through his wife, they rent out a haunted house. They invite some guests over, and they offer them $10,000 to stay the night. Because it's
strangers, aren't they? As well?
Yeah, complete strangers to Vincent Price's character and his wife. So they don't know each other, and the only person who's been in that house before is
it's Pritchard.
Pritchard. Yeah. He owns the house, and his brother and his brother and his sister-in-law
died
there, and he firmly believes it's haunted.
And he spent one night there and was found close to death.
Yes.
According to him, yeah.
And he's the most paranoid, skittish of the lot. And you've got, obviously, everyone's like, you've got the pilot, Lance, who's the cocksure, typical sort of 1950s American,
kind of reminds me of a young Dick Van Dyke.
Yes,
a little.
Yeah. And then we've got there's Ruth, who is the journalist, who basically, quite honestly turns around and says that she's there for the money. She's not, there's no airs and graces about her. She's skinned.
The journalist telling the truth. My God, bless her.
There's the Dr. Trent, who specialises in panic and hysteria.
He's like a psychologist, isn't he?
And
he's there to get the money as a bonus, but he wants it as a case study, kind of.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and then Nora
reminds me of a medium Bob Monkhouse, middle-aged Bob Monkhouse. Sorry,
Bob Monkhouse. Oh, bless him. God bless Bob. And then we've got Nora, who works in one of the offices.
Yes.
At Vincent Price, and so it's all set up by his wife, who is largely absent throughout the beginning. She doesn't seem to want anything to do with this party that she's asked him to arrange.
Yeah.
And like in the remake, for those who've seen it, they get locked in and they go searching, they go hunting for ghosts. They go on a house tour. And Pritchard's filling him in the history of who's died there. You know, there's a bit where he's at the top of the stairs, and he goes, "Don't stand there." There's a big pool of blood in the ceiling, and it's still dripping, and so all these little early, probably golden tropes, but sort of the earlier, the genesis of these tropes, I would say.
Yeah.
And you got sort of little unexplained events, like the guy who goes into an empty room and ends up unconscious, and
he's got a little wound on his forehead that's to be cleaned up.
And there's apparitions and stuff. But the interesting thing I found was at the start with when we're first introduced to is it I can't remember his wife's name, Annabelle, Vincent Price's wife. They're not happy at all, are they? It's definitely
that dynamic. And the dialogue those two share is fantastic. It's the best part of the film for me. I could watch those two argue all day.
Yeah, it's so they're just biting at each other, aren't they?
Yeah.
And it's witty, and there's a bit of venom in there, and there's basically he's very aware that she's tried to poison him at some point, and she all but says in her body language she's definitely saying, "Yes, I did, you bastard," but her lips are saying, no, it's
it wasn't intentional, dear. Kind of,
yeah. And she's played very much a bit like femme fatale.
Yeah.
And it's and she's like, you get the idea she's a lot younger than Price, and I think she's his fourth wife.
Yeah.
And two of them have died in mysterious circumstances already. 2
heart attacks, and one of them disappeared.
Yeah, and she plays it that it's nothing to do with him. It's his jealousy, isn't it? She puts him down as a very, very jealous person, and that's the only reason he's suspicious. It's because he's jealous. But obviously later on we find out that he's not just jealous. It's suspicions are sort of ring true. But the great thing about it is you set up all these things like they talk about his brother and sister, Pritchard's brother and sister-in-law, are found. Well, the heads were cut off. It was them, wasn't it? The heads were cut off.
Yes.
But the heads were never found. So they set up little things like that. In the wine cellar, there's a giant vat of acid under the floorboards, where the original owner wanted to off his wife, and the skeleton came up. Because it seared everything away, all the flesh away and stuff like that. So as it moves along, they all get armed.
Yeah.
They all get a pistol. And it's almost like there's a joyful wittiness to it. Some of the characters take it sort of in stride. I think it's a bit of fun. It's an easy way of making this money. Ruth is constantly drinking alcohol. She's just there, seems to be there for a giggle.
Absolutely. Nora seems to have it worse, don't she?
She does, yeah. And it's sort of, Nora sees the blind woman apparition. It's the first time she sees something, that door, the doorway, and it's how the old woman floats towards her ever so slightly, about 2 or 3 feet, and then floats back into darkness. So it sets up that sort of tone. And as obviously we move along, this scares, this, that, and other, until Annabelle is found hung. After she's relayed her fears to Lance that something's going to happen to her, and which is quite interesting because you would initially think, because of how worried Annabelle is about his jealousy and stuff like that. She goes straight to the young, good-looking pilot. Oh, my husband! I'm worried for my life. I think he's going to do something, and then we find her strung up. So they all start turning on Vincent Price, and it's only later on that it's revealed that the Doctor and Annabelle have been having an affair, and they're trying to send Nora mad. In order to kill Vincent Price so she can run away with all the money. And and it's a great sort of twist in its plot. But then it turns out Vincent Price is already aware of it, which is brilliant, which is absolutely brilliant, and it's all. And the nice bits are that obviously when we believe that Annabelle's dead, they use that to great effect with trying to twist Nora's mind, and she appears as an apparition and stuff like that. So it's just played incredibly well, and I think even now there's certain parts of it that have a nice little punch. I remember the opening, so I had it on the TV, everyone else was in bed, and the opening is just, it's pitch black, and there's a scream. It is absolutely ear-shattering scream, and then some moans and chains and stuff. And it was only after reading a little bit into it that I realised that was like the genesis of the old recordings where you could buy ghost house sound effects.
Yeah.
On vinyl, and likewise, its influence is that Alfred Hitchcock saw it and went, I can do a horror film on a small budget and make a load of money off it, and that was Psycho.
Yep.
So it's definitely a film that's it's been ingrained in people's minds. It's had an impact.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of my favourite little facts about the film is that didn't William Castle try and integrate these gimmicks into some of his films? And I think one of them was at the end scene where this, obviously we'll talk about in a moment, but as you mentioned, like this vat of acid, and basically there's a skeleton involved in the film. And what happened was, in the actual cinemas back then, they would swing kind of a skeleton over the audience, but I think they'd stop that because the like local youths would be throwing popcorn and drinks at the skeleton. That's one of my favourite, I think, pieces of trivia in film. Just thinking like back then, like the ingenuity to just think about it and push the boundaries and do it, and then the kind of selfish pricks that.
But could you imagine that opening? Can you imagine being sat in a theatre when on the lights of those speakers pitch black and there was noises going? Have you never experienced anything like that before?
Oh,
that's quite it's a bit of a
it's a shock
barrage on
senses,
that's it. It's a big barrage of noise, and it's really impressive. I think I said the ending as well. I was talk about the skeleton and everything, is because they believe that Nora shot Vincent Price. That's played, because he's aware of it, and then it turns out that he's not. There's a scuffle, isn't there?
Yeah.
And it turns out that he's thrown the doctor in the acid.
Yeah.
And he's waiting for Annabelle. But he uses a skeleton on a little pulley system, little sort of puppetry system, which scares the shit out of her because she thinks he's dead, and it pushes her into the acid. And the sort of like, as it all comes together, the remaining characters come together to find out what's gone on. And he quite sort of rightly says, "Look, I knew what was happening. It was attempted murder. I'm going to go to the police. It's up to them what they decide to do, and I'll take whatever punishment is thrown at me." But knowing full well that he's done it in self-defense, he's got witnesses to the fact of all that setup and everything.
Yeah.
But then there's still like a little, even though we've not technically seen any hauntings or any ghosts or anything, because you can explain the heads that Nora finds just being set up by Annabelle and Dr. Trent and everything. But Pritchard's still convinced, and right at the end, isn't he? He's still convinced, and he's still paranoid, and he still says like, "That's
We've got two more.
We've got two more, yeah." It's like, maybe I'll be next, or maybe one of you. And it's like, but yeah, so it's sort of like, it doesn't. Yeah, people might go away disappointed, thinking, "Well, there's no actual haunting in House on Haunted Hill," but it's an effective, like I said, it's an effective murder mystery. Yeah, it's with sort of little scare elements thrown in. So it's a great little film.
I think as well, I think it's really difficult when you review a film or watch a film, then put it through the ringer that me and you do, like with essentially modern films, because you've got to look at like the techniques and things that they used then and the technology that was available to them. And the thing is, modern films are, and obviously I'm generalising, but there is a lot wrong with modern cinema. I think a lot wrong. But what we sometimes maybe forget is we do have higher expectations of things, and I think like with dialogue or explanations or things like that. I think to a film's credit back then, sometimes it got on with films. It got on with the plot and it moved forward. Sometimes now we do want that explanation, or sometimes I've sat there going, it just feels like they were missing something. So it's almost like I'm trying to get them to put more in the film. But I think with this one, I think there's a few issues around. I think if we'd have had it explained to us that everything was a setup. And Pritchard was a bit of a after someone did die, his brother did die in the house. He's just convinced he can't get over it or something.
Yeah.
But it's one of those films that equally I would say what a challenge to have to write that in.
Yeah.
You can imagine it being in the film now if it was made today. You get this kind of shitty narration as we're leaving the house. But every time I try to not criticise, well, I suppose it is criticising it in a positive way. I really do like this film. I think it's very stylish. I think it's a brilliant murder mystery. I think Vincent Price is fantastic. I think the dynamic. Yeah, and for me, equally saying there's a few things that just because I can imagine people being a bit disappointed that there's no ghosts or anything like that. But at the same time, I think when you look at maybe just if today that could have been like just held together tight and we'd have gone great. Like the lady, was she a caretaker? Was she not? If she was, how did she float? Was she on a skateboard?
Yes, well, that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, because I would put it down to, for me personally, I think it's Nora's interpretation. It's how Nora's perceived it. That she's terrified. She's already a jumpy character. She doesn't want to be in that house. Yeah,
I do believe that, and I think in where I can't never criticise things too harshly because I do think it's probably like back then. I don't think there's that many films that ever left so much up to an audience member to decide.
They don't hold your hand with it. That's the great thing about it.
Absolutely, and I think the cast have all got great chemistry together.
I think they work really well.
Yeah, and I think that Vincent Price and what's his wife's name? The actress, it's Carol or something, isn't it?
It is. Just 2 seconds. Carol Omart.
Yeah, that's it. I think those two's dialogue is fantastic. It's
brilliant.
It fits. It holds. Sometimes, like with old films, even like 10-year-old films, you can sometimes think. Either a bit dated or that maybe they wouldn't say that today, or it comes across a bit cheesy now because of the amount of stuff we've watched. I think you could lift that dialogue and put it in a film today. The relationship between each other is very real, very real.
Yeah, and like you said, it's quite easily to get lost in those two. Each time they're throwing barbs at each other, you do want to see more. You're right. I could easily. It's like going to the theatre, and you could imagine, like it's like. Taming the Shrew or Cat and Tin Roof, you can imagine just watching those two slinging verbal shit at each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
For an hour and a half and be completely satisfied.
Yeah.
By whatever the outcome is.
Yeah, I think I'd have liked a film maybe where those two were the last two survivors held up, and there's ghosties on the outside, and those two still can't resist slinging shit at each other.
Yeah, it'd be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, Price was great because it wasn't like I was reading. He was passed on for a role that William Castle, like an earlier film that he'd wanted to play, and they were sort of saying, "Oh no, you're wrong for the part." And it was a chance meeting. I think after they were having lunch, William Castle and Vincent Price, and it was kind of, I think, William Castle's way of apologising for passing up on him for this role, and then turned around and went, "Oh, by the way, I'm making this film, which is House on Haunted Hill." I think they did that back to back with, I think, The Tingler, and it was like a two picture deal. Which again, Vincent Price had already been in a few things by that point, but this really sort of kickstarted his sort of horror icon status, because a lot of it, a lot of his big stuff done sort of 60s and 70s, he's still holding his own when so with like Theatre of Blood and stuff like that. So he's a brilliant, long and varied career.
And it's just actually how imposing he is. He's quite a really tall guy.
I think he was about, I might be wrong, but I think he might have been like 6'4" or something like that.
Yeah, you just it's something like I think it's because he's so charismatic and like classically like old style handsome with the little pencil mustache and stuff. I think you like his height and his like broadness doesn't really stand out until like when he's arguing with his wife and you're thinking, wow. When he pulls her a ponytail and you're like, whew.
I'll just check. I've had a quick look. 6'4".
Yeah.
And it's just he's that epitome of, like you said, his charisma. He uses presence, and there's something, because he has that slightly unique tinge to his voice, and like you said, his look, you're quite right, the pencil mustache harkens back to the golden age of cinema.
Oh yeah.
But that's carried through into sort of the later movies as well. And I dare say a lesser actor. And then people sort of like look at Vincent Price and might think, and I'm definitely not one of them, but a lot of people might think it was sort of a bit gimmicky. It's a Vincent Price. You watch a Vincent Price film for Vincent Price. You don't necessarily watch it for the plot or the horror, or whatever. Yeah. But he's always been a performer.
Absolutely.
He's got many strings to his bow, and you look at his sort of, I know we're sort of going off on a bit of a tangent, but personally, he loved cooking and art, and he's a very well-rounded, well-read person. He brings that command. I've seen so many different performances, sympathetic ones, sort of like The Fly. Because people think that people often forget that he's not the Fly in the first, the original Fly. It's the actor who plays his brother, so he's quite sympathetic. Invisible Man, I think it's Invisible Man Returns, which is the second one, the Universal one. It's a really early performance from him in that one, and he's fairly sympathetic in that. It's not like the Griffin character in the original, So he has played it quite mixed, and he's not chewing any scenery in this. It's all, like you said, it's all out.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think when people, like you said, people like get this idea there's a gimmick to him, or there's like a bit with Cage where it's a bit like, we're going to see Crazy Cage today. But I think that's unfair on Vincent Price. But also, like you said, I think with this film, it's everything's totally in character. Everything is that character. There's not 1 ounce of Vincent Price. It's completely just gives himself up to it, and I think it's brilliant. And I think one thing I have to say is Pritchard and the guy who plays Pritchard, is it Elijah Cook or something like that? I think he's him and Vincent Price at the beginning, where it's just after the darkness we spoke about, where their heads are just completely floating, and they're like kind of introducing the setup of the story to the audience, and then Vincent Price takes that a little bit further by almost, he gives you an introduction to each character again, which is nice. So we don't have to put up with that because we know they've got to all meet each other, so we don't, we can just get straight in there. But also, it feels like he's addressing you. You're invited along to the party. And it just, Harriet's just so stylish. It's obviously they sat on more black tops. But the floating heads, and then we get the titles over the house as they all arrive, and it's just it's just mesmerising, I'd say. It's really well done. Really well done.
It is. And I think that's the other thing is, you look at the piece and Vincent Price, people are probably more used to him playing the villain, or
Yeah.
and whatever. And he's not, he's not the villain in it. He's the one who's put upon. He's not completely innocent.
No.
He's got. He knows that they're trying. They're out to get him. His wife. His wife and a lover are out to get him. So rather than phoning it into the police, or he goes along with it, and he does kill them at the end of it.
Yeah.
But you could easily argue it, like he does, in the way he pronounces everything, in the way he presents his argument at the end. You do kind of think, well, yeah, they did deserve it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They were framing him. So,
yeah. So he's not. Again, he's not the bad guy in it, which is nice. It's nice to, and he's so gentle when he's talking like to Nora, because he does sort of care for Nora when she starts wigging out, and and he's about his guests when he like making drinks for everyone. He's a host. He's such a nice guy. Yeah, you don't think, and it's only when, again, he's in those scenes with Annabelle that you see that little bit of menace. But that's because she's driving him to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Point. She's working him completely.
And I like that there's no classic good guy, bad guy, and I think, well, really not, is there? Because look at it from Annabelle's perspective. He's had three former wives. She wants his money, but does that make her evil? It might make her a bit of a bitch and shallow, but framing them for murder, that's bad. There's as close as you can get for bad guys, but they do have motivation.
Yeah.
But I like that there's, like Vincent Price, like I said, he's not the bad guy. He's not the good guy. And the film, the closest you get to the white hats in the film is Lance probably, and Nora, and Nora's put through the ringer, and she'll be like the scream queen, isn't she? In it, they made her lungs work for her money.
Oh yeah, God, yeah, they did, yeah. But then again, Lance makes me laugh because the first time when they get in the cellar for that first time, and everyone goes, "Oh, let's go back upstairs for a drink," he like shuts the door, and it's almost like you can imagine in that sort of setting, it wouldn't be out of turn in a film of that period from go, "Come here, baby," and put a massive smacker on her lips.
Some sugar, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you kind of think, what's he? It's like, no, stay down the cellar for a little bit longer with me. It's like, oh, I was gonna...
Lance Weinstein. Yeah, he's definitely set up to be the lead, like kind of handsome leading man. But I like that the film kind of, like, almost, see, the film's not a parody, but the film almost does kind of like, invert your expectations.
Yeah.
To a degree of that you think he's going to save the day, and he's trapped behind a fucking wall in the film.
He is,
stuff like that. And like you said, the twist, we might now go, oh yeah, the twist. But actually, like you said back then, that's probably really good. So maybe Mr. Ryan Johnson just throwing it out. That's how you subvert expectations again.
That's it. I mean, it is. It's for me, it's a classic for a reason. It's the stuff we've talked about. It just works on so many levels, and I've never seen like the original 13 Ghosts. No. But it will make me want to go out and watch it because of knowing that William Castle's involved and the writer as well. The same writer. I just think, why not? It might be a bit gimmicky or whatever, I don't know. But then again, it could be, hopefully superior.
It's not got much competition if it's going head against the remake. Yeah. So, no, I think it's nice. And I think that one aspect that me and you agree on is I think you have to look at a film in its period. There's no point, and it really annoys me with anybody. I'm not just going to blame people today. Like, if you've not seen a film and then you go and watch it. So, for instance, if I've not seen a film from the 70s, so I go and watch it, why should I be expecting the same as a film made today? There are certain films, I think, sorry to go off on a tangent, but like you look at this as a horror film, and I know it's still 59, but look at horror films afterwards. And this is why The Exorcist was so shocking, because The Exorcist today, I know some people will laugh when they watch it because rude words are said by a little girl and everyone thinks that's funny. But The Exorcist, put that on for people at night, genuinely, on their own, and to tell the people who are brave to watch it. And I think that really does stand the test of time.
It's what he's considered. I think was Exorcist 74.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah. So it's only
yeah.
What fifth?
Like 15 years, isn't it?
Yeah, 15 years. Yeah, 15 years later, and the jump from what's perceived as classic horror, in 59 to 74 is a massive leap. It's a massive risk as well for studio. For Warner, it's quite brave of Warner's to turn around and go, you know what, we'll take this book, throw some money at it, let's see what happens, and
but how could I expect possibly a handful of films like that? Like I've said to you before, Ghostbusters, Raiders of the Lost Ark, films that are very like made in the 80s, which never sounds that far away until you realise we're in 2020. But you watch it in like high definition Blu-ray, and you know straight away you're there. You don't think it's an old film, and these films as well, the script, the effects, they all stand up.
Yeah.
Whereas this obviously doesn't. This is, I mean, I actually want to, the next time I watch it, I want to try and watch the colorized version, which should be quite nice. But this is, like you said, classic horror, classic haunted house horror. It's not supposed to be a edgy, gritty kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? It was never supposed to push the boundaries within realism or something. This is supposed to be, like you said, a murder mystery kind of haunted house setup.
Yeah,
it's almost like a late afternoon horror film for everybody. And like you said, there's some jump scenes in it, but I don't think the film was ever meant to be this ghost flick that people seem to want it to be. I like I've said, I think it might be difficult for modern audiences to watch to get their head around a few things. And obviously from my perspective, there's just a few things that it'd be nice if it was a certain way, but that's my bias regarding watching it like when I was 16, 17. Regards to like watching it when I was a bit younger and not having really seen that much horror. So but even then, like I said to you, I think that for the very few negatives the film has, it's far outweighed by the real good stuff. And I'm sorry if a lot of films could learn from, if we're talking about 1959 film being reviewed in 2021, and we expect there to be this few negatives, then I'd be pretty pleased with myself if I was William Castle wherever he is right now.
That's him. I mean, the interesting thing, just going to say, I mean, it fell into the public domain.
Yes, it did.
Because someone didn't renew the copyright on it. So that does mean that even though
bloody Jodie,
I think I'm not sure who has the current. There's some way, I think it might be like what was Fox possibly, who still can make a certain amount of money off it for a certain version of it along the lines. But the beauty of it is that anyone could go out and see this film. I think you could probably watch it all on YouTube.
Yes.
And I would recommend, if you can struggle to get hold of it, it is out there. And for a lot of people, it is not say go out there and pinch it, but it's free. I think there's a film library, an online film library somewhere where you can watch all the public domain films. So go out and get it. There's nothing stopping us from remaking it or download it off YouTube, stick it on a Blu-ray and ship it out and making a fortune of it. But it's, in all seriousness, it's one of those things. So I think it warrants people seeing it. It definitely it's earned its stripes that way. It's as a classic. And it's, I think that's the thing I liked about the remake, and I do like the remake.
I do. I think it definitely suffers from late 90s, like like I don't know, like explosion of like headache of CGI and stuff where they were figuring out. But
I think that's the big problem for it, because it's got some great performances in it.
Jeffrey Rush is magnificent.
He's brilliant.
Lovely tribute.
Stephen Price.
Lovely tribute.
He's absolutely brilliant in it. right down to his pencil mustache. But he's got a very he's got moxie in that, isn't he? He's got a very It's set when it was made, but he's got a very old fashioned sort of showman's Walt Disney. It's like Walt Disney were on crack sort of attitude towards it. I think Famke Janssen, it was
brilliant.
In that period of, she'd done Goldeneye and Deep Rising.
Just about to make X-Men next.
Just about to make X-Men, yeah. So she was on the rise. Was it Chris? Is it Chris Kattan?
Yeah, he's Pritchard.
Yeah. Pritchard, yeah. And the only thing and what I remember, I haven't seen it for years, but the thing that I felt really did let it down was that over reliance on CG, where they could have used, because it is sort of, they do this sort of dark sort of entity that was it's sort of like the Rorschach. It's bleeding out sort of thing.
It's clever, as in it's like an ink blot of naked ladies and souls that it captures in, if you're going with the fact of the psychiatry, the mental institution. But it is that on paper, if you read the script, you'd be like, oh, clever.
Yeah.
But its execution is poor. Very poor.
It's very poor.
Sorry, mate, go on.
No, I was going to say, I think they could have just approached it with, I would have enjoyed, I think it felt more, because with it taking on Famke Janssen mainly towards the end, as she sort of becomes the villain almost, in appearances at least, that I would have just probably utilised her with makeup and lighting and costume and done it that way without worrying about CG. It seemed like CG was an easy fix. Let's just everyone using CG, so let's do it too, sort of thing. And it lets it down quite a bit, because the other physical stuff, the stuff with Jeffrey Rush, when he's being, he's in the machine that's taught, it's like messing with his head and stuff like that. And there's some really nice sequences. And you get Jeffrey Combs does so much in a silent role. All that stuff's weird and creepy enough.
Very Jacob's Laddery, some of the stuff. I wish it had been more of that.
So it lets itself down in that department. But there's worse remakes out there.
But I think regarding, there's two things picked up from that. Quickly, I'll just say that I'm glad they remade that, because that is where I think a film goes, right, we're on the classic, right, but we'll bring it to a modern audience. Now, that's where I admire that, and I go, okay, two things can exist, like The Thing doing the same in the 80s.
But that's the great, sorry to interrupt, the thing is with that is that they went that one step further and went, actually, we'll make it a haunted house. Story.
Exactly. They've added to it, absolutely. And originally, I don't think, reading about it and watching some of the stuff back in the day, so this is primarily a 59 review, so if I get it right, Jeffrey Rush was never supposed to be like pencil tash and everything, and he said, look, I don't want to do a straight up homage to Vincent Price, because it'd come off really cheesy, and it'd be like, why did we just not like do this for Vincent Price? And it would, and no one can do him justice. But he kind of wanted the pencil moustache, and he based himself off Vincent Price. And is it John Waters? And again, so I think that's great that you're able to like give that nod back to to the original. But I think take away Famke Janssen, Jeffrey Rush, Chris Kattan, I think the original's cast is much better, because I think that you've got, is it Bridget Wilson Sampras now? She's one of them. She's pretty blonde, journalist. You've got Ali Lauter, who again pretty blonde, brunette blonde. Then you've got, and I forget his name, the young black guy, bless him. And there's really nothing interesting about them. At all. And that's something against them. Like I recognise Ali Lauter from
Taye Diggs.
Taye Diggs, yes. He has gone on to do really well, but I just thought he was given a thankless role of kind of nothing to do. And I think comparing it to the original, I think the cast is just so much better.
Yeah.
In the original, I think they all kind of, I think they can be a bit snarky when they want to be. They can all, like you said, Lance is the nice guy, but you think he's definitely straight away trying to put the moves on Nora. So I think it shows you that the fact that the cast and the characters are, even though like Ruth doesn't have a lot to do, and Pritchard goes missing from time to time, I think the cast is much better, and I think it's, especially for a film in the late 50s, where you can say that it's easily much better writing than it's than the remake in '99. I think it shows you that they're onto something. And I think that with that, the amount of good writing for the characters they've got, it just leaves me wanting a bit more from those two, especially Vincent Price and and his wife. I think that's just such a fantastic dynamic. I know we keep saying that, but I can't praise the writing enough for it. And we've got to get out of the mindset of, oh, it's a skeleton on a string at the end and stuff like that. It's the 1950s.
Yeah.
The twist was brilliant. When I first saw that, I was like, brilliant, great. Do you know what I mean? And so, yeah, just watch it. Just like you said, it's Stripes. It's your history. It's your horror education.
Yeah, that's
it. It still deserves to be.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, all hail Lord Price.
Yes.
Stop playing with an Infernal Clutch. Sorry, I know it's a bit of a tangent. It's one of my all-time favourite bits out of Simpsons with the Vincent Price egg painting kit.
Oh, it's
hello, this is Vincent Price. If you're phoning about the eggs, it's about the feet, isn't it? If you're phoning about the missing feet.
Oh, it's so good. So good. Brilliant.
So rating. Let's talk about ratings. Where's it hold up for you, mate?
I would probably give it 4 biscuits. I think that it is a staple of horror, and maybe if I was like watching in the 50s, it would be a golden biscuit. But I think I've just got to compare it from the age we're in now. We are in that age, unfortunately, and we don't review films like you don't go back to your childhood and rate it as what you gave a film as a kid, would you? Because
no,
no. And I think that I know I keep saying it, but we're talking about a film in the 1950s, late 1950s when it was released. So it would have been maybe a year or two earlier when it was started to be made and developed. And I think it's just a testament that it's still discussed and watched and spoke about so highly. So yeah, I think I'd give it 4 biscuits, and I think that's an incredible achievement for a film made back then. Absolutely.
Brilliant.
What about you?
Yeah, same. 4. I think it just misses out on that pit, because I think there's tiny little elements I think you could improve it. I think sort of character-wise, sort of story structure. I think, but again, I think that's just down to like you said, used to being, us as audience members are used to films being made a certain way. Things are a little bit tighter. Things are not always, but I think most of the time things are a little bit. You get to where you go in a bit quicker in films, especially from the 80s onwards. We grow in the age of films being 84 minutes long, and that's acceptable to get everything you need in 95 minutes. Nothing in the 80s was much past an hour and a half.
No.
And don't get me wrong, it's a short film. It's only for about an hour and 15 minutes.
15, yeah.
But it does everything it needs to do. I just think, like I say, I don't know.
It's difficult, because I think that you're right, and you sound like me, like you're almost trying to back away from some of the criticisms, because I think that even though you can throw some criticism at the film in a positive way, like positive criticism, like an actual critique, I think some of it is by design and intention. So I think that, again, it makes the film stand out, and me give extra plaudits to the film, because I think although some of it didn't quite work, like you said, it deviated from the norm then, from the
Yeah.
structure, and it let you interpret that with Nora and stuff. And if they'd have just tweaked a few little things and added a bit of dialogue, we could have gone, wow. But I think it's back in the 50s with a limited time run, and it's trying something completely new. So I think, I'm not like trying to say to like William Castle, well, you've completely fucked up because you missed this part. I don't think it's that at all. I think some of it was just grand design, and I think it's not quite pulled off because it was just such a fantastical idea at the time and so out of the box that I think no one could have done that everything what would have wanted from it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, great, mate.
he's done a bloody good job.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So thanks for everyone for joining us, and
Yeah, thank you very much.
yeah, we hope you enjoyed it as much as we've enjoyed waffling on about it. And please do go out and watch it. And we say this all the time, but we really do. You think it's definitely a film worth revisiting or just finding out if you've not seen it already. But yeah, so before you do that, please give us a like and subscribe, or if you don't want to do that, at least comment and let us know what you think. Let us know what you thought about the film, and if you think we're wrong about our rating, if you think it deserved better, or if you think it deserved worse, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And
yeah, absolutely. But best comment gets tipped in a vat of acid. So,
but with that in mind, it's good night from me.
Yes, and good night from me. I'll close the door as I leave. Or the vault.
You take care, mate.
Yeah, you too, buddy. Thank you.
Bye-bye.